Hello everybody, Jayma Malme here. Today I have a 12 by 12 scrapbook layout for you, documenting when my daughter broke her arm when she was 3 years old. So this is something I've been wanting to document for a while, but when the Sounds Like It Hurts stamp set came out from Close to My Heart in their latest catalog, I knew that this was the time to do it. This is so perfect. I love these dies. These, what you see in the blue, are dies, so they just cut out the band-aid shape, and then there's these stamps that go along with it too. So this is going to be super fun. And I have a picture here of my daughter after getting her cast on, and then after the doctor when she needed to go to x-rays. So I'll tell you what happened and how she broke her arm. It was Daddy's fault, but it was a total accident. He felt terrible, but I'll explain that as we get going. So I have the Dream Maker collection in front of me. I picked out a few of the patterns that I thought would work nicely with my photos. Obviously I have a lot of pinks in here. I have some different pinks in here, and I think that this light shade of pink is gonna work nicely with all of the pinks that I had. But I didn't want it to be like the background because that was just a little bit too much pink for me. So I was actually liking this kind of periwinkle as the background. I think that it works well with her purple shirt here, and then I'll bring in some pink and other patterns to kind of complement it. I have a whole bunch of scraps from this collection here. I've created a couple layouts with this now, maybe 3. Now I can't remember. Yeah, 3. I've done 3. And so I've got a bunch of other patterns that I'm going to bring in, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I was turning to the Creative Design team's new sketchbook. Now this is an 8.5 by 11 sketchbook, but a couple of the sketches in here are inspiring me for my 12 by 12 layout. So as I was flipping through, the first one I saw was this one, and these strips on the bottom. I've been drawn to this layout here a few times now, haven't used it yet, but I will soon because I just really like those stripes on the bottom. So I thought, well, what if I do like some band-aid strips going across the bottom? And then I turned to this page and I saw this one, how the strips are diagonal, and I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. I could do them at a diagonal. So maybe I'll do that. But then I saw this one next to it and I thought, oh, that could represent all of the band-aids cut to kind of stagger each other. And I'm really leaning towards that. I like it a lot. Now, if you like to create 8.5 by 11 layouts, I showed you a couple of those last week. This sketchbook shows you exactly what to cut all the pieces at, gives you the inspiration. There's 21 double page layouts for a total of 42 sketches in this book, and it's available as a digital download down in the description below. But I'm using it more as inspiration today. I might use it for some of the dimensions for cutting today, but mostly I just use it for my inspiration, and so that is totally okay. If you're going to use a sketch as a jumping off point and just to spark your imagination and keep going, then that's a lot of times what I use a sketch for. That's great. Or if you are someone who just wants to follow the directions, follow the recipe, and create your layout like that, then that's great too. I love sketches for all of those reasons. But let's go ahead and dive into today's project.
I started out by just die cutting a whole bunch of these band-aids. I have my scrap paper sorted by bigger pieces that band-aid will fit on, and smaller pieces that little square piece that goes in the middle will fit on. And I just ran them through several times, and then I'll be able to mix and match how they go onto my page. Here's how they all turned out. So I ended up liking them with sort of a matching square on top of the band-aid piece so that there's not a ton of contrast. So let's go ahead and get these on my page.
I've started laying out my band-aids, and I was making sure to keep like colors sort of spread across the page so they're not right next to each other. So like the teals are kind of like this, so nothing's super right next to each other. And I've got my photos back approximately where I think I'm gonna have them. I think my title is gonna go up here. And I was thinking that I wanted this to be the whole background and that this would just cover the bottom portion, but it's not enough contrast for me. I'm thinking that I need something different behind the band-aids. Maybe keep this still up here. I'm going to keep these photos up here not exactly in the right place, but just to give me an idea, if I sort of slide this white under here, so it's like the Band-Aids are all on white. I don't know that I like that stark background. Take that off. What if I keep the Band-Aids on the periwinkle and make the white back here? And then maybe add like a little separation, like a little black separation, or maybe even some silver shimmer trim. That could spice it up and look really pretty. But I'm still thinking that this white is a little bit plain. So let's take this away. And I have this really pretty paper. It's the back of this striped one. And that could be just the ticket. It's still enough white space, I think, that it's not super stark, but it's got all the pretty colors that I've got down here. And I do have it in some of the Band-Aids, so it'll bring that in. I think I'm liking that. And I was originally thinking that I'm gonna do a black separator, but I'm really liking the silver, so I'm kind of leaning toward that now. So I do have some embellishments from the Dreammaker collection. It has a black, like this paperboard material as the embellishments. So I was thinking that I would scatter some of these around. So these ones actually are, I just backed them with paper. And the way I did that was I just glued them onto a piece of paper, and then I just trimmed it out. And I found that it helped if I held my scissors kind of at a, I guess it's like a 45-degree angle, so it gets a little bit underneath that paperboard piece. And you can see I'm cutting away just ever so slightly some of that black, but you're not going to be able to tell because it's just from the bottom. And so we'll just trim that out, and then that gives a nice backer to these pieces. And I think it's nice to kind of have this same color carried around the page. So maybe I'll want a solid one there. So something like that. I could even bring one down here and put it here. So let's see, do I still like... Yeah, I could still use the silver shimmer trim, or you could use a thin strip of glitter paper. The difference is this is like a sticky back ribbon. It's thinner than a glitter paper. The glitter paper is like on a thick cardstock. So sometimes if you're using the shimmer trim and it's overlapping two pieces of paper, like if I had it overlapping both of these, if it's much of a difference in the overlap, you'll be able to see that line, or it's not as smooth a transition with the thin tape. So sometimes to get around that, I'll make sure that it's right over just one of the papers. Or in this case, it's probably not that big a deal because it's just one layer. But if it's cardstock and it's a little thicker, or it's a couple layers, sometimes you can see that transition. So, and then sometimes I like a thinner piece, like this is a 1/4 of an inch. And this piece here I have cut to 3/16 of an inch. So if I wanted a thinner strip, I would probably cut cardstock. That would make more sense to cut it thin. So we will decide that later. But I think what I'll do is get these glued down onto this background paper, get this cut to size, and then we'll come back and start assembling everything.
I decided to build my layout onto a white sheet of cardstock. So I'm just adhering that onto my Versamat here to keep it in place so I can line everything up nicely. Now this is that splatter paper, and I'm going to adhere that on the top of this 12 by 12 background, and then I adhered all of these Band-Aids onto that periwinkle patterned paper. I didn't mention that there are 2 sizes of the Band-Aids, so this is the larger of the 2 sizes, and then later on I'm going to add a little bit of detail with the smaller of the Band-Aids. Now that those are adhered, I'm going to decide between the shimmer trim or I trimmed a 3/16 inch of glitter paper. So I have my photos in place and I decided to back them in black to go with the embellishments. I often back my photos in white, but since these photos have a pretty light background, I did like just the black. And now looking at those two sizes, and I'm putting a few of my embellishments in place just to kind of get a feel for how it's going to look. And I do like the thicker piece of shimmer trim. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. And since the middle of this layout is hidden, I can just use a couple of small pieces. So I'll trim that off, and I peeled the backing off and then trimmed it just so that it is easier to peel that backing off of the shimmer trim. Sometimes it can be tricky to peel that off. So I like to keep a little piece that's longer than the actual shimmer trim at all times so that it's easier to peel that off when I need it. And I also had it just go off the edge a little bit because I figured it's easier to trim it off the edge than to line it up perfectly. I pulled out a few stamp sets to try for my title. This first one I'm pulling out here is called Bold Marker, and I'm just holding up the bottom of the set to see if I like the style of that font. And I do like that one, so let's try the next one. I've got the Havana set. This set is a really pretty script, but it just to me didn't fit the layout. So I'm going to set that one off to the no-go pile. And then I've got the Moxie alphabet. This is one of my very favorites, but I think it's a little too chunky and big for the space. I had a few stamped and die cut already, so I just set them there and I'll live with it for just a couple minutes to see. I do love that you can die cut them out, but I'm holding that bold marker one up again and going to hold up the letter part of it. And I do think that that's a good size, and I'm envisioning it stamped in black. And even though there's no dies for that one, I think it'll look really good stamped right onto the background. So stay tuned to see which I choose. This is the stamp set that comes with the Dreammaker collection, and I'm toying with some background stamps. The Dreammaker collection had that kind of text one, and then this is the background elements stamp set, which I love, and I was thinking I wanted to use that splatter stamp, but once I held it up I didn't like it because we have so much splatter on that background paper. There are a couple other stamps on either of those sets that could have worked, but I landed on this text stamp, and so I'll show you how I'm going to be doing that in a moment. I want to get my embellishments in place first so I know that where they are going to go, and then I can stamp the background stamp. So first I'm finishing placing all of these black paperboard pieces, and then I'm going to bring in a few other elements. I've used these same leaves on my other Dreammaker layouts. It's from the Layered Flowers die set. It is a go-to die set for me. So I'm going to put a couple of those up there. And then I think I want to make that bottom right little area a little bit bigger. I want to create a visual triangle with my embellishments, but I don't want them to just be kind of floating off on their own down there. So I'm going to create a little cluster so it has a little anchoring. And then this is where I'm also going to have my journaling in strips kind of coming out from that little heart area. So I added just a couple of the leaves from that leaf die so that there are some leaves in each of my clusters. Now for my background stamping, I'm practicing first on scratch paper just to make sure that my stamp is stamping well, and then I'm using second generation stamping. This is a great way to get the color that you want in maybe a little bit more muted tone. So I don't want it to be a really dark, vivid black because I don't want it competing with those dark, vivid accents that I already have. So I stamped it onto my scratch paper and then stamped it onto the little areas that I want on my layout. getting those embellishments back in place. I like that so far. It needs a little bit more, so just kind of trying to figure out where else I want this. I think I want this one on the left to go down a little bit further. I'm leaving a little gap for that dragonfly to fit. I love that little dragonfly. It matches the kind of the butterfly on my daughter's shirt there. So it can kind of tuck in there. And then I wanted a little bit down underneath the photos too. So again, using the scratch paper to mask off areas that I don't want it. So I am liking that. I still feel like I'm missing a little bit. It doesn't feel quite balanced to me. So I'll do a couple of other spots here. Thinking I want a little bit down in that bottom right corner with that little element. There's going to be some journaling down there too, written with a black pen. So I don't want too much down there. And while I think about where else I might want some, I'm placing the stamps for my title. And then I thought, yep, I want some right here under the photo, just a little bit more. And then I think that's going to finish off the stamping. So I'm just going to clean that off with my stamp chamois. With the archival black ink, you definitely want to clean it right away because that ink stains more than other inks. But I like the archival black because it is, to me, the darkest, most vivid black. I stamped my title off screen because my head was in the way most of the time. And then I cut out a couple of the smaller band-aids and I used them as a little accent up here on the top. I thought it just needed a little bit something up there. It was a little blank. So I liked the way that looked and then trying to figure out a way to use this extra little piece that came off. So I tried tucking it under my photo right here and I really like that. You can use this almost like you would a tab die. So I'm really liking that. And I thought it needed just a little bit more color. So I did another one in the Lagoon marble paper and just layering them together and putting them underneath this little photo here. So I think that looks really cute. I'm going to finish gluing these down and then add some embellishments. So I thought I would tell you what actually happened here. So my husband was kind of bouncing my daughter, playing a little roughhousing on the couch, and he was bouncing her on his knees and she fell on the ground. So, I mean, just from the couch or his knees to the ground, I mean, less than 2 feet we're talking. And she fell just wrong. We didn't realize it was broken at first, but it was getting swollen and stayed red. And so we're like, we probably should take her to the doctor. My husband's like, oh, she's fine. I was like, no, you probably should take her. So he did, and then x-rays showed that it was a hairline fracture. But can you believe at this age they heal so fast? She was in a cast for only 3 weeks, so it's just barely a blip on her radar of life. So anyways, that is what happened. And now I was journaling the story, and I'm using my favorite journal strip stickers. I love these because you can just write out your story. You don't have to worry about line breaks and all that, and then just peel off the stickers and snip them where you want them. So on this last strip, I left a little bit of extra room at the end so I can add the date. I need to look up what the date was, and then I'll add that. But I just really like how that looks. And then with the strips, you can still see that background behind it and just adds a nice look. So here is a look at the finished page. I did curl up the leaves just like that to give them a little dimension. If you want to see still shots, I have those on my Instagram and Facebook pages. Those are linked down below. And I'll also be posting a card or two using the leftover Band-Aid die cuts that I have. If you would like to see some more layout ideas using this Dreammaker collection, then click on the playlist that's on screen right now. And if you're interested in anything I used, it's linked in the description box. Thanks for watching and have a great day.